up? Yes, thank you. So, having rounded up the guests, I'm now about to hand over the mic to Marty McFly. No, sorry, Imtishan Giado, who's going to talk you through cars and movies.
Thank you very much, Shazad Sheikh, who is not Marty McFly, but I am, because nobody else can be Marty McFly. And this is going to be a discussion about Back to the Future for 3 hours. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. So, we are going to be talking about cars in movies, we're talking about the A-Team van, we're going to be talking about the Gnome Mobile, we're going to be talking about cars and why they make their way into films and why we love the cars in films so much. And I have an incredible panel today. I have Arafat Ali Khan from Extra Cake PR, I have Shariq Madani from Filmphoria, one of our favorite local websites for films and film and criticism, like I said, criticism. And we, of course, we have Miguel from the Alain Classic Car Museum, who has driven all the way from Alain to be here tonight and talk to you. So please make sure you give a round of applause for coming all this way. Thank you very much. So now we're going to give a little bit of an intro to our guests and see why actually we should listen to them. What do they know about cars? What do they know about movies? Actually, who are they? Arafat, who are you?
You didn't tell me how to introduce myself. So,
are there cars here?
There are plenty. So, you know, it's a good, I think, mixture of being a geek but also loving cars, because I've also owned some very cool cars, if I may say so myself. And
I want to show you his key tag. He's got a Cadillac. He's got a very, very fast, very rare Cadillac CTSV. But please continue, Arafat Ali Khan.
Well, do I just carry on saying what?
No, you're done.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Shariq, tell us a little about Filmphoria and what do you do?
Well, Filmphoria is a local website. My friends and I, we're movie geeks. Proper movie geeks. And we've been writing movies, writing reviews on movies in Dubai for the last 12, 13 years now. So 2 years ago we got together, started this website, Filmphoria. And we just geek out on that website. Now, we love movies, and movies tend to have cars, so we like cars too.
Man, movies tend to have cars. That is the best possible answer a man could have, who knows nothing about cars. But anyway, we'll keep you on the panel. He is staying, and all the kids are leaving. Thank you, kids. Hello. Miguel, you've got a big interest. You actually have a degree in film.
Yes, indeed. For a while, I used to host my own television series with another co-host, Daniel Hoover. We call it Open Roads, and it was pretty much like an American television show.
I feel a little underqualified sitting here now.
I think you are underqualified. Why don't you have a degree in film? None of you have a degree in film.
He organizes the film con here. Come on.
So what's your problem?
It's a good thing that he does this.
Fantastic. Well, we have a great panel of guests, degree in film, a film criticism website, and the biggest geek in the UAE. There is nothing he doesn't know about geekery. So we're going to start off with an obvious question, which is film cars, right? And what is a film car? A car that's used in the film. Sometimes it's the point of a film, sometimes it's the tool. So if you're talking about a car that's the point of a film, well, look at my t-shirt, look at my chest. It says Back to the Future. And it has the DeLorean in it. And that is literally the entire point of the film. That car is everything. Yes, I know, I really like my car. Thank you, Shazad. I really like my car. Sometimes the car is a tool. If you watch Fast and the Furious, the cars are stars, but really it's about Vin Diesel, it's about Paul Walker, rest in peace. It's about these guys and their adventures, and the cars are simply things that take them from place to place. So, what are your top, let's go three favorite film cars, and why? And you can't talk about this too long.
Wow.
No repeats.
No pressure then. I always liked the cars that you couldn't really figure out what, you know, like what is that car in that movie, you know? It's not like, oh yeah, that's a Challenger or that's a Charger or what.
So a car that you couldn't see at the Dubai Motor Show, a car that wasn't easy to notice.
And now I'm going to show my age now. So
he's 21.
one of the movies that I remember watching when I was really young, thinking, what is that? I want that car. Was a 1980s Charlie Sheen movie called The Wraith.
The Wraith, great movie. Great movie. If you haven't seen it, go and see it right now. It's a great movie. No, it's not. It's a terrible movie.
It is pretty bad. I watched it again recently and I was like, wow.
Tell us about the car. Tell us about the car.
I'm not sure. It's a Toyota.
So I have to tell you about the car because he doesn't know. Yeah. It's a Chrysler concept car.
Yes.
And it's a Chrysler concept car.
Right.
It actually really worked. It was called the Wraith. Okay, do you have another car or is that it?
I do have another one, but it's from a TV show.
That's allowed. That's allowed.
Yeah. Again, you couldn't really figure it out, but I think a lot of people did. You didn't have the internet to check out what it was. But another 1980s TV show, short-lived, called Automan.
Automan. Okay, this is going to be for people over the age of 35, this entire panel. So, Automan had a car, and Shazad's already said what car it is because he's older than 35. What was the car?
It was a Lamborghini Countach, I think, right?
That's not interesting.
No, but at that time, you couldn't figure out what it was. It had lights all over it. It was,
it was Satwa Lamborghini Countach.
Yeah, it did feel like that, but it could also transform into a helicopter. So everyone kind of wanted that car because, who doesn't want a car that transforms into a helicopter?
Cool. I think we got a couple of cars.
Yeah.
Shariq?
My favorite car is in one of my favorite movies. My favorite car is a Jaguar XK, and it was in Memento. And that is my favorite.
Can you repeat that again?
In Memento.
Oh, Memento.
Yes. The car that Guy Pearce drives, that's a Jaguar XK, and that is... I love the movie. I could talk about the movie more, but you could probably talk about the car more. But that is my favorite car from the movie.
Have you got another car?
Yes, it might be a
Why
funny one.
Jaguar XK? It's a big green Jaguar coupe. It's
Yes.
a big Jaguar, comfy luxury car. What's special about that car? Why did it speak to you?
First, it just looks gorgeous. I think there are very few cars.
He's really shallow. He just cares about looks, brains, none of that.
Okay, when the movie came out, I was an impressionable teenager, and I've seen the movie so many times back to back. At that age, the car is imprinted into my retina, so probably that could be a reason. But yeah, I can talk less about how the car is physically in terms of what it could do, but within the movie, it's great.
Another car for us? Or is that
Yes, this might be a funny one. I was very young and again impressionable, but it's a
You were very
Chrysler.
impressionable. Yeah. Are you sweet 16? What's going on?
The cars are remnants of my impressionable age, but it was a Chrysler that was the Ghostbusters mobile, the Ghost
That was
mobile.
not a Chrysler. Why do we have it?
What was it?
It's a Cadillac.
Was it a Cadillac?
1959.
But
that is the car.
here.
I'm sorry. Well, but that
Right
is...
here. We have the man from Cadillac right here who is now cringing and he's putting on his...
You need to make sure the car's in the remake then.
It is in the remake.
great
It is in the
then.
remake. But
Nice,
it's a
I've not seen
Cadillac
it.
hearse. And Ronald from GM could probably tell me what the car is, but everybody asked him afterwards.
But I'll give you one last one.
Oh, he's got one more. He's
Yeah.
get it right this time.
This is not a production
Otherwise,
car.
you're off the stage. Okay, this is it. 3 strikes.
It's the Tumbler.
Oh, finally. Okay, who here knows what the tumbler is? Nobody knows what the tumbler is? Has anybody... What movie is the tumbler in? Okay, you know. Batman Begins? Excellent. You all know what the tumbler is. Now do you know what the tumbler is? Have you seen Batman? Hands up who's seen Batman, the new Batman. Okay, you all know what the tumbler is. You all just were watching that movie with one eye shut. Anyway, it's Batman's car. It's a huge, amazing tank-like thing that jumps about. It's amazing. And it's called the Tumbler, in case you wondered. Miguel.
Well, I gotta say that there's no car, no film car, like the Ford Thunderbird in Thelma and Louise.
Wow, Thelma and Louise, this is getting really specific and really nerdy.
You need to have younger people on this panel. I think.
Seriously, degree in film man over there is just Thelma and Louise. Okay, something slightly the people might know. Dumb it down for us, degree in film man.
Anybody familiar with Lamborghini Miura?
Yeah, Lamborghini Miura, cool looking car, beautiful car from the 1960s.
Yeah.
One of the most beautiful cars ever made, the first supercar.
Exactly. My favorite is the one from the Italian Job. In the beginning,
Italian Job.
we have a beautiful opening sequence in which this Lamborghini Miura, bright red, just drives all throughout the Swiss Alps. And eventually, it collides with an excavator set up by some mafiosi and is thrown off a cliff.
That's not cool. Now I'm really sad. You just blew up the car. Oh, do you have a third car or is that it?
Well, we've got the Thunderbird, the Miura, and I think the third one would be the Mercedes in Ronin.
The Mercedes and Ronin. Ronin is a great car movie from 1998, actually. How many of you have seen Ronin? Who's seen Ronin? Has anybody heard of Ronin? One person's seen Ronin. Excellent. That's a smart man.
For those who
Ronin
don't
is...
know, It is a 450 SEL. It is this big, very over-square Mercedes from the 1970s. Brown in color, very unassuming. The thing is, it is powered by a 300 horsepower power plant. In real life, it has a 300 horsepower power plant.
So it was a really fast car. It was a real car that you could actually buy that was really fast.
Back in its time, it was faster than many Ferraris.
Yeah. So that's a very cool car. Those are three great film cars. So for a lot of us, the passion has come from TV and movies. You've all talked about cars that you've seen in TV and movies, as opposed for a lot of people here who I think who have the same passion. You've all seen a car in a film and thought, I wish I had that car. I wish I owned that car. I wish I was that guy in that film. Now, the manufacturers of all these wonderful cars at the Dubai Motor Show, they all talk about motorsport. But why do you think we relate so well to these cars in film? Why do we relate to these cars, gentlemen? Anybody take a crack at it?
I think movies the most popular form of entertainment that the general people indulge in. And good movies and the best of movies make you identify with the characters in them. And when that character is driving a cool car, it makes you feel that, oh, this is a car, this is a guy I identify with, this is the car that he's driving, this is the car that I would want.
You're still an impressionable teenager then, were you?
I am. I will continue to be. I don't change.
For me, movies are escapism. They're fantasy.
Do you have a really hard life? He works in the mines in Satwa.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. And you know, when you see those cars in the movies, it's something you can aspire to. It's just like, yeah, you know, I could be that person. Like what Shariq said as well. You know, a little bit. It's identifying with those people and wanting to be them and wanting to drive the cars that they drive.
Great answer, even though in fact you just copied his answer and rephrased it. It was good. It was very clever.
If you hadn't said it, no one would have realized.
You know, I try to break the bubble. We are talking about cars and movies, film cars, everything about film. And Miguel?
Well, I think that I really like when a car's in a movie, and the movie does justice to the car.
Right. The movie does justice to the car. Give us an example.
I would say that Miura is the perfect example. Just imagine the traditional, what you would think of an Italian exotic car, driving in this winding road, just the sheer enjoyment of changing gears, of seeing the ups in your windscreen, just the wind in your hair, smoking a cigarette, leaving your arm out of the window. That is living the car. And
except for the cigarette part, we have children here, no cigarettes. But apart from that, and he was driving at a safe speed naturally, wasn't he?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to steal his answer actually.
Well, I'd like to add something more to that actually. Movies are first and foremost about visuals. And they tend to objectify what they put in front of you. They objectify movies so well, they make them more appealing that they might actually be in real life. So it just appeals to you that much more.
So your people, just like cars, everything in films is objectified. Actors, people,
fashion.
Products is a great way to represent things. So here's something I noticed in common. People who are watching this and thinking, okay, they're talking about movies, but they're talking about really old movies, man. I mean, 1968, is it for the Italian job? Thereabouts, you're talking about the 80s. Yeah. I mean, what happened to cars in movies? Why aren't cars in movies cool anymore? I mean, you're talking about the Tumbler, that's okay, that's 2008 when Batman came out. Why don't we have cool cars in movies anymore? I don't see them anymore.
I think they do, but they're getting so fantastical in the movies now that you can't relate to them anymore. It's just like, no, that car is not going to go flying that far.
I think you're talking about a movie with Vin Diesel in it.
Yeah, probably. And, you know, actually what was coming to mind...
Him, in case you're wondering, him, the bald guy. Not him, him.
You know,
there's a lot of bald people on stage, but we'll let that go. But that one.
Full head of hair. What always comes to mind when you just ask that question was the first two Transporter movies. Now the first Transporter movie had some really fantastic, almost realistic driving in there.
Wait a minute, Transporter 2. I'm sorry, this man is clearly wrong. He jumped off a ramp, swung it upside down, and knocked a bomb off the bottom of the car.
So that was
realistic to you, was it?
No, the first Transporter. Skills transporter, you could say that, well, you know what? If you had skills, you could really do that. But then they started moving away from that, and it was just like, yeah, what you said about the car flipping bomb,
He knocked the bomb off with the hook of a crane. I mean, nobody here in this audience can do that. I think Jason Statham couldn't do that in real life. I think he didn't do that. And I think he was faking it.
A little bit. And I think that's the issue, why we're sort of kind of pulling away from...
Wait a minute, you mean Fast and the Furious isn't a documentary?
The first one is.
Compared to this, actually, right, the first one is very realistic. But now I go to Satwa and Mamzar and I see Fast and the Furious every day.
I used to do that back in the day.
Fair enough. But you're talking about street racing and car culture, and that isn't the way anymore.
It just isn't. You don't see that anymore. I think that's why we could all relate to the first Fast and the Furious movie, because they're like, oh yeah, I really want to do a burnout when I leave the cinema, because that's the fun thing to do. But
don't do burnouts. Don't listen to him.
No.
But now it's all about family. I can't do the voice. Family. Familia.
I think movies, cars in present movies are also still very much something that people can identify with. Because today, if you go out,
disagree with him, fight with him.
No. We will agree to disagree. But if you go out on the road today and if you see a Camaro, you might not think of a movie. But if you see a yellow Camaro,
go on. What movie do we think of?
If you see a yellow Camaro, yeah,
what do we think of? Somebody tell us. Transformers.
And Transformers is a present-day film, so they still can do that.
It's 2007. It's not that long ago.
We're having a part 5.
Why are we?
Which we don't want. But it's similar with other cars too. If you see the Aston Martin DB9 or DB10 now.
Okay, Aston. You're on nice with me.
Are you making fun of my accent?
I am making fun of your accent because what is the car? Pronounce it properly.
What is it called? Tell me.
Aston. Austin is a completely different car company.
I grew up in a country where they say Lamborghini, not Lamborghini.
That's not the people of the trade center's fault. So, okay, Aston. T-O-N, not T-I-N. It's not tin.
Austin.
This is not an elocution class.
The DB8 or the DB9, not the DB10.
There is no DB8. Come on. Help me, people. Aston Martin DB5.
I confused it with the DB8. You know the DB8.
Different film series, different world. Aston Martin DB5. What movie did that car show up in? Who can tell me from the audience? Right there. Okay, which James Bond movie?
I remember it's the first one. I've watched everything.
It's not the first one. Complete failure. Which James Bond movie had Aston Martin DB5?
Actually, it was in Skyfall.
Okay, it wasn't Skyfall, we'll give it that. So, okay, Goldfinger, for those who are wondering, is the first time we saw the Aston Martin DB5. And you can...
That is the first James Bond.
Oh, there are 3 other James Bonds before that.
Dr. No is the first James Bond.
Film critic. He knows what he's talking about. Now he knows what he's talking about. So, what's the movie in cinemas today with an Aston Martin in there?
Spectre.
Okay, have you seen Spectre?
Yes.
Okay, this is great. How many people here have seen Spectre? Who's seen Spectre? One person's seen Spectre, one person there has seen Spectre, 3 people have seen Spectre. Why is nobody seen Spectre? Guy in the back, thank you, guy in the back, thank you. Okay, what did you think of Spectre?
Colossally disappointing.
No, nobody's gonna go see Spectre now.
You asked for my opinion.
Guy in the audience, what did you think of Spectre?
I found it very dull. 3 minutes of the DB10, that's all I found.
Oh, so no cars in this movie. You want to see cars in here. But were you excited to see the cars at the motor show? They have the actual cars inspected here at the Jaguar Land Rover stand.
In fact, the Jaguar, wow, what a car.
So that wasn't disappointing.
No, not at all. But the car chase was.
So basically cars aren't realistic anymore. You can't relate to these cars. Let's ask the professor. What do you think? Why don't people make cool cars anymore?
Well, I think it's 2 factors. The first one is that, I mean, we're in a much more complex world of media today than we were 50 years ago. In the first movie that featured the DB5, Goldfinger, we see that they actually had to get 1 unit and they would have to pay to get another one, so they just did the entire film with 1 Aston Martin. So they had to take very good care of it. Right now, in the 2000s, 2015, you have to pay, or you get paid for product placement. You also have to license the logos, the car design. You cannot make a car from scratch that looks like something because then you get sued. It is a lot more complex. The second reason, and this is more of a personal thought, it is, I mean, in the 60s, the 70s, even now, all the way up to the 80s, you know, the world wasn't such a great place. You know, you had the Vietnam War going on. People really long for this idea of freedom in a car, and they really instilled that idea in the film. I mean, Thelma and Louise is a perfect example. Two ladies, they escape their abusive husbands, they take the Thunderbird and they just go. They just go without any set destination. That is the spirit of the car, at least in American cinema. So that's my opinion on why.
I can't really give him trouble there, because that's a really intelligent, well thought out answer. So let's just change the topic before we have to talk to him again. But we don't want intelligent, well thought out answers here. We're talking about film cars, and you've talked about a lot of film cars. You talked about Thelma and Louise, you talked about Transformers, you talked about Aston Martins, what about product placement? We'll get to product placement, but films come along every year. Every year there's a different film. Very few of them actually have cars in them now, as we've just thought about. But TV shows, they used to have tons of cars. Who remembers the Ferrari 308? What was the Ferrari 308? Which TV show was it in? You've answered already. Anybody else want to have a go at answering it? 308 Ferrari. Come on, one of you knows. Night Rider was not a... Magnum PI, thank you very much, sir. Magnum PI had a Ferrari 308. Every TV show, Rockford Files. What did they drive in the Rockford Files? I think Shazad is the only one old enough to remember the Rockford Files. Shazad, want to give us the answer?
It was a brown car.
You're not with him, are you? What's the answer to the Rockford Files car? Come on, anybody knows?
It was an Austin.
It was an Austin. It was an Austin Healey. It wasn't. It was, what was, actually I can't remember, what was it?
It was a Trans Am, wasn't it?
It was a Trans Am. Every car in the 70s.
Do I get a prize?
No, you don't get a prize. Starsky and Hutch, you had Automan, you had shows like, you know what I'm going to say next, Street Hawk. Every show, there's Airwolf, even the helicopters, everything was cool in the 80s. All these, what happened? TV shows, what happened there? Why aren't there supercar TV shows anymore?
They tried in the 90s. In fact, it was the
They tried to tell us more.
It was the most beautiful piece of product placement ever. In fact, the name of the TV show was the name of the car.
Excellent. What was it?
Viper.
Viper.
Yes.
So it was
You're a big fan of Viper.
I was a kid.
This is a nostalgia show. This is actually more than nostalgia. Carry on.
It was a TV show about a Dodge Viper that transformed
To another Dodge Viper?
into another Dodge Viper.
Excellent.
Exactly.
Excellent.
It was fantastic. You know, it looked more like a Dodge Viper when it transformed. But, you know, I love the show. It went on for a few seasons. They changed it up with various actors. And for me, as a geek and a car guy, it was a breath of fresh air. I was like, finally, you know, another show with a car in the lead, because you didn't have anything after the 80s. That, as far as I remember.
Actually, we had another car, but it was a car that's very close to your heart because you had one. I had one of our favorite actors, David Hasselhoff. What is this show?
Yes, Baywatch.
Now, you may not know this, but Baywatch wasn't just about the beach and running in slow motion on the beach. Baywatch had a spin-off show which everybody's now Googling. It was called Baywatch Nights. Tell us about Baywatch Nights.
There was only one reason, okay, maybe two, but we can't talk about the second reason. There was one reason why I watched that show.
Was it good?
It was, because it's something I aspired to and I finally owned one. Was an Acura NSX.
Acura NSX, that is a very cool car.
Yeah.
That is a very cool car.
It should have had more screen time than David Hasselhoff, to be honest.
So David Hasselhoff drove an Acura NSX and fought crime. Yes, when he wasn't on the beach, he was fighting crime. And then later on, in the second season, he fought ghosts. Yeah. No, seriously, Baywatch Night Season 2 decided to rip off the X-Files.
I fought crime, I didn't fight ghosts.
You seem to have fought at the gym a lot more. critic, TV shows, why aren't there cool cars anymore?
I think my reason for that is that the target audience for TV shows has changed a lot. And I think this happened sometime 3 years ago when they were either aiming for the tweens, when you would have shows like Smallville, etc., or they were aiming...
There were no cars in Smallville.
Exactly. That's
a very good point, actually. Modern TV shows they don't drive places, they just appear there.
So they're aiming for the youngsters. They're aiming for the youngsters who don't really get into cars so much nowadays, probably, at least the target audience. And the other kind of TV shows, those are your HBO dramas. They were either costume dramas, fantasy, or even if they were present day, they were serious character dramas that hardly had any cars in them.
So I'm disappointed for a man who doesn't care about cars.
No, I'm very happy that they make those kind of TV shows. But yeah, it's still good to see good cars.
They still see that. And look, but there are other ways, right? You have shows today like Mad Men, which just finished, which had beautiful cars. Beautiful cars. The whole episode revolved around a Jaguar E-Type. So
Mad Men, I still think is an exception that really showed those kind of cars.
This is really the nostalgia show. What does the professor think? Did you actually watch TV? Have you seen a television set?
Definitely. I know what it looks like.
Touché, sir. What is the TV? Why do TV shows not have cars anymore?
Well, I think that the genre of television series has evolved. The humor has evolved. The sort of
discussion has evolved.
Yeah.
All of a sudden.
The stereotypes have evolved, and the focus of the show has evolved. I think that right now most TV series, they tend to be very, very intellectual in their aim. They tend to be very, very wordy. There's not enough action. Or very, very strategic. Something like, House of Cards.
That's the point, isn't it? The cars gotta have action.
So why don't we have a car as the main character? That's the question. We have a lot of other competing media. We have two rather reputable car shows. We have Top Gear, and we have Fifth Gear.
But those aren't shows. But those are just shows that review cars.
Yeah,
that's a big difference.
I mean, back in the times when they were no dedicated car shows.
That's true, actually. Now we have a lot of car content, and of course you have inside the Dubai Motor Show where you can see so many cars.
Yeah, the car purists have become so purist. They watch shows exclusively about cars. No shows with cars in them. So you have things like Top Gear, Fifth Gear. You have this little YouTube series called Kung Fury. The guy just
Kung Fury. Kung Fury is a great YouTube series. What is great about Kung Fury? Everything. Actually, he's right. You have to go and see Kung Fury right now. It is the greatest thing you might ever see. For those who are walking by, we are talking about cars in movies and the greatest cars in movies and why cars don't appear in films anymore. And we talked a bit before about product placement. You can see the James Bond cars at the Jaguar Land Rover stand. I want to ask you guys a question. You got product placement because that's what it is. In Transformers, Chevrolet Camaro, it is product placement. In Fast 7, that car is an accident, it's product placement. Has it ruined car movies? Don't all jump in at once.
Well, I love cars. Okay, but
thank you for that. He loves cars. Ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause. He loves cars.
I would say yes. And the biggest culprit, I think, of that is Transformers. Because
the man from Cadillac is sitting, and GM is sitting right here.
Yeah, I mean, I love the cars. I drive a Cadillac, but when you think back to the Transformers animated series, you would see all
the greatest animated series of all time. All time. I will brook no dissent.
You would see all kinds of cars.
Because they transformed into every kind of car.
And the most figure things, Jeeps, Porsches, whatever you thought of.
Whatever they couldn't get the licensing rights to, basically. And because they didn't get the licensing rights, they just made the toys and hoped for the best.
And every year, the Transformers movie would come out and I think, okay, great, now we're going to have some new, different cars transforming.
This is not true, because if you look at the last Transformers movie, which we both have gone to see actually.
And we almost slit our wrists. But
I cried a little bit. Yeah. And not because of how good it was. But they had Ferraris in there, they had a Bugatti, so I think you're wrong here.
I don't even remember that, to be honest with you. So that means that either they had hardly any screen time, and everything was focused on the Chevys, which have lovely cars, but...
You have one. Come on, you have one.
I do, and that's why they're lovely cars.
You'll never get one again.
But it's just getting too obvious. You know that, okay, in the latest Mission Impossible, the BMW.
The BMW movie happened to be called Mission Impossible.
Well, but they were sort of going through the streets and stuff like, oh, there's another BMW. Oh, they just passed another BMW. Oh, what? It just gets so oppressive. You're just like, come on, you need to relax a little bit. So I feel it's getting a bit too much.
Gentlemen, I think the first time I realized that product placement was starting to ruin movies for me was during the Pierce Brosnan series of the Bond films.
Hey, I like those movies. Hey.
I have an opinion on you now.
Already. Go on.
I'm judging you.
I can take you off the stage, but no, keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
The BMW cars in those were so overwhelmingly placed, they kind of sidetracked the film, and eventually that's what it really became about.
To be honest, I wanted to see more of the Z8, so I don't really agree. I wish there was more Z8 in the
This is because you're coming from a car point of view, I'm coming from a movie point of view. This is also the reason why a lot of people were disappointed with the movie Drive, because they went in expecting a lot of driving. They didn't have
One of these people is in the audience, he's Shazad Sheikh, and he was actually very disappointed with that movie.
Drive has one of the best car chases, I think. The opening escape scene in Drive is amazing.
I agree, it was awesome.
For those who have no idea, we're talking about Drive, Pierce Brosnan. We are talking about cars in movies and cars in film. And this is a very depressing panel because it seems there are no good cars in
You
movies.
mentioned Ryan Gosling, we'll get all the females in there.
Listen, when they come and see this panel, they're expecting Ryan Gosling. It's not going to happen. So Pierce Brosnan, okay, what was wrong with those movies? Okay, actually I understand your point. You didn't want to see so much of those BMWs.
And also it works hand in hand with the fact that if the movie is in itself not that great, you start realizing these mistakes. If the movie is good,
I think I see what you're saying. Some of those movies weren't great. The World Is Not Enough. No car chases. Not a great movie.
now let's talk about a movie that is good, Casino Royale. It's a pretty good film. Okay, it has an Aston Martin in it. It was product placed, but did you notice that? Most likely not. Even if you did, it did not play a part of you thinking that this is a bad thing, because it was a good film.
Again, I wanted to see more of the car in that movie.
They wrecked it pretty bad.
Here's why he's completely wrong. He's completely wrong. Tomorrow Never Dies is better than Casino Royale. You know why? Because Pierce Brosnan drove a BMW 7 Series from the back seat with a Sony Ericsson phone, and this is 1997, and the car had rockets. So many rockets. That's 3 rockets. Come on, rockets. Is rockets not cool, people? Nothing? Rockets cool?
Yay! You've been wanting rockets since like the last few panels.
I want rockets, and that movie had rockets. The Casino Royale car, no rockets, not a great film.
Can't go wrong with rockets.
See, I like him. He's a good guy. Let's hear from him now.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with the two of you. I think that right now the film industry is really listening to the highest bidder instead of doing a little bit more filtering in the kind of cars they choose. Back in the old days, they would actually listen to...
He's really young, by the way. He's like a teenager. He's younger than me.
I just dress old.
He does dress old.
But earlier on, they used to seek the car. They wouldn't just take bids from all the automakers. They would just cram the films with a specific brand, like they did with BMW, or they've done with Mercedes. You have a Unimog, you have a G-Wagon, you have this other lot of Mercedes. You immediately notice it. Back then, they would just select the cars that were right for the characters, the car that would describe them in fullest.
Give us an example. Magnum PI is one. Give us an example.
I would say that, we're talking about James Bond. James Bond is a character that most people can relate, that people know. In the book, I believe that James Bond, in Ian Fleming's book, James Bond drove a Bentley Supercharged, which is, it's inherently British, it is powerful, it is a grand tourer.
So why didn't he drive a Bentley in the film?
I would say that for the 60s they wanted to update the image of James Bond, and it would just be a complete anachronism to have someone in the 1960s driving a Bentley Glover. So they would pick the equivalent of the Bentley Glover back then. Powerful
DB5.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful car. It's a beautiful car.
Indeed.
And it still is a beautiful car. It's so beautiful, in fact, that people are still talking about it today. Well, we're coming to the end of our discussion, and maybe it's been a bit depressing, it's a bit nostalgic. because we've all said that car movies today are not the same. And we're still watching them. We're still watching Spectre. I mean, a lot of you are going to see Spectre once you finish seeing the motor show. But I'm going to ask you a question that's fairly obvious. What is the last great car movie? And I'm going to start you off with an example. For me, the last great car movie is Gone in 60 Seconds with Nicolas Cage. I had Eleanor. Gone in 60 Seconds. Who's seen Gone in 60 Seconds? Man, everybody's seen Gone in 60 Seconds. What a great movie. He's seen it way too much. You need to do other things. Read books. Here's a question, actually.
And it had some really nice throwbacks to Vanishing Point because they had the white Challenger and the black Dodge Charger, and it's a great film that you don't see as a Dodge product placement.
What's your name?
Heat.
Why didn't we have Pete on the...
I was thinking the same thought.
Bloody hell, he knows his cars better than that bloke.
Yeah, I mean, that guy's really nice, by the way, but you know nothing about cars. Austin Martin. Okay, so I've given you a card. Eleanor from that movie, absolute classic, has changed the industry. We know of a person, an Emirati friend of ours, who's actually changed his Mustang to look just like the Eleanor. How many cars get people to chop up their cars and recreate their favorite movie cars? I mean, I bought a car because of associated with the movie, the DeLorean, but I'm not choosing that movie. I'm choosing Gone in 60 Seconds and the Eleanor. What's your choices?
Just to be clear, I didn't buy an NSX because of David Hasselhoff.
We believe that, people. We believe that.
Don't hassle the hall.
Exactly. It's a movie for me that we already mentioned, but I think it just made such a great impact on a lot of people at that time and at that age, I think, which is, and some people might not agree, and I'm really interested to hear your opinions on this as well, but Fast and the Furious, the very first movie.
That is a great movie. The first movie is a really simple movie about street racing.
Exactly, and
You also rip off a Point Break. A big rip off a Point Break. There's no originality at all.
True, but you know, it got into the nitty gritty. You know, even though a lot of it was wrong. I mean, blowing the manifolds and stuff like that was
Nothing in
particularly
that movie
weird
was
ways.
racist. We got a man nodding there who modifies cars. He knows what the film is about.
Exactly, but you could see yourself being there, just like, yeah, I'm going to take a Honda Civic and I'm going to overnight the pouch from Japan.
Well done, well done.
And you know, put a spoiler, lower it, put some nice rims on there, and you know what? I've got a really cool car, and it's something that you could achieve. You know, and it had stuff that you know you could aspire to. The RX-7. I mean, who didn't want to have that Veil side kit? Even though
I love that car. I've never seen it before. I mean, I was 21. I was in Dubai. I was watching the Fast and the Furious. This is going to really embarrass me. I watched it on VHS because that's how long ago this was. It actually was on VHS. And it was in like a square screen. It wasn't even like a wide screen. I was poor. And I remember seeing those cars and thinking, what are these cars? I've never seen these Japanese cars before. They don't look like Corollas and Camrys. They don't look like Sunnies. I've never seen cars like this before, so I understand what you're talking about.
just before I pass it on, and it's very embarrassing, but I'm going to say it because there's not that many people. I had a Honda Civic.
30,000 people. 30,000.
I had a Honda Civic Type R when I watched Fast and the Furious. And I did go and get racing stripes on my car after I
All
watched
the respect gone right there. Racing stripes. You know, that was such a nice answer. I was going to make a crack about how you look like Vin Diesel now with the hair loss and all. But I'm not going to make that crack. I haven't made it, obviously.
No, but to give you an opinion on that movie, you asked for it. So, whether good or bad, whatever, but if somebody, even if you're not really a car geek, you watch that movie, you come out and you want to drive fast.
Exactly.
That means it's done its
That's
job.
the best thing he said all night. Exactly. What's your car movie?
See, I don't look at a car and think of a movie. For me, it works the other way around. So when I think of a movie and then think of a car, I think of Lincoln Lawyer, I think of Drive. Yeah, those are the two latest that I could think of.
So at least 3 people have seen those movies. Okay. Miguel.
Well, there are many good answers. I think.
One answer. We don't have 2 hours.
Now, as in terms of the latest,
the last great car movie that people will remember, they'll talk about, you'll tell your grandchildren about. One movie. Tell us about it.
I I wouldn't say it is a car film, but it has a very significant car. I would say that the Hangover, the silver Mercedes.
The silver Mercedes, the pagoda roof convertible, which the tiger got trapped in.
Actually, ever since that film, the prices for those Mercedes, the convertibles and the coupes have skyrocketed. So when it comes to car films that actually have an impact on the value of the cars, that is pretty much the most recent one I know.
Seriously intelligent answer. Seriously intelligent answer. I mean, what are we doing here? Okay, before we go to the Q&A session, last question. It's a multiple choice. You can do this, it's not that hard. Cool car or cool gadgets? So to give you an example, Casino Royale DB5 or Skyfall DB5 with machine guns and rockets. Pick one.
Cool cars.
Can we get a hallelujah for this man? Thank you very much. Cool cars.
Cool cars.
Cool cars. So you don't need the gadgets. You don't believe that's necessary. Finally, we'll have to warm up this guy. We like him. He's great.
Cool cars, by far.
You know, I'm kind of sad because nobody voted for rockets. And I've been talking about rockets for like 20 minutes now, and nobody wants to do rockets.
Can't own a car with rockets.
You know, I've talked to that guy in the last panel, and he said you can get anything through the RTA. But rockets are very illegal. Rockets, machine guns, anything with weapons, very illegal. So, do we have any questions for our esteemed panel? We got a question right here.
I do have a question. Since Fast and the Furious was your favorite film, how did you think of Tokyo Drift? Because I watched all the series, like I grew up with it, and I kind of felt disheartened with the Too Fast. It became like CSI with cars, and then when it came to Tokyo Drift, it felt like it hit close to home because there's the car culture and then Japanese, and then I was crying with the Mustang part because I'm a big American sucker. So how did you feel when you saw that?
He cried. He cried. That's what a car movie does to you. He cried over the car. A guy died in that movie. Actually, everybody remembers Han, but he cried over the car. That's a car guy.
I totally agree with you.
The short answer.
The second film was for me horrendous. And when the third film came out, it was like a breath of fresh air. I was like, oh my gosh, there's still chance for this franchise. Because, you know why? The first car, not the second so much. I love the first car.
Does it remind you of all the toy cars with each time?
Each car is unique. And that's what really came out in the Pixar Cars movie. You know, like, you had the grumpy old guys, you had the young, you know, aspiring racer trying to make something of it, and I really connected with that because you can't really do
Jurassic Park, when you know it actually rescues, helps in rescuing the characters of the film. So I think the soul part is really important, when it comes to cars in the movie. And when I saw the Mercedes, I felt like, okay, I really need a Mercedes 4x4,
Product placement works.
Do you work for Mercedes?
Absolutely not, no.
Can you afford a Mercedes?
Yeah, definitely. I drive also Cadillac, so I can.
Brilliant. This is another question, but the last question because you're holding the screen tight.
I just have a question for all the three guys. What do you think is the most purest car chase in a film?
What a great question. Purest car chase.
wow.
Best car chase. Best car chase. I mean, everybody here has watched a car chase. What's the best car chase ever made? No pressure.
I'll go first in this.
Please be a good answer.
All the Bourne movies have very good car chases, right? My favorite is not generally the crowd favorites from the second film, Bourne Supremacy, the one that takes place in Russia, which is between a Russian car, I don't know what it was called.
I believe it was a Volga or something.
And a Mercedes or whatever, G-Class, I think. I think that's the best car chase.
That's a great car chase. That is a great car. It's simple, it's raw, it's analog, it's everything that modern CGI car chase. Because the cars got bashed up and you felt, he had his arm broken, he was driving, so you really felt for the guy.
And the thing about a car chase is that the car chases can be good, but the way they start, I think, matters a lot. And this car chase starts in one of the best fashions. You're inside the car comes crashing into you, and then it starts. It's great.
You don't need 3D. You don't need 3D at all. You're in the film. You're in the moment. Next one.
That was a really good answer.
You don't have to give him an answer. You only need one.
Two. One older and one like very, very recent. Answer. Exactly. Ronin. Ronin for me, that was some of the most intense, insane car chase sequences when they're going against the traffic and they're flashing their lights like get
It's
out
just
of my
like
way.
Sheikh Zayed Road in the morning. We've all experienced it. It's just like Sheikh Zayed Road, especially when the fog comes.
And one recent movie that I don't know, I mean, we've not really talked about it at all. I consider it a car chase movie because it's a car chase from start to finish, and that's Mad Max.
Yes. Mad Max Fury Road. Finally, somebody talked about Fury Road. Who's seen Fury Road? Oh, at least quite a few people. But that doesn't have any real cars in it.
But that was so visceral. You know, everything that was
Visceral is a great word. What does that mean? Everybody loves the word visceral. But that actually, to translate, that involves guts, your guts and body, flesh. So, tone it down, and what do you mean?
It felt like you were part of it. It was so intense. It was, for me, it was all about that. You don't know where this movie started from, what the impetus of the characters were, but all you knew is that there was this insane chase going on. There was a truck. The main car was a massive truck that could just literally go in a straight line, but you were just so invested in
Investment, that's the word. You're in the characters. You want to be part of them. Miguel.
I completely agree with you. Mad Max Fury Road is perhaps one of the latest, greatest films in terms of a car chase. I mean, the moment in which they start pouring gasoline into the intake, these guys know what's going on.
That is a car nerd speaking right there. He's absolutely right. Car chases. But I think that's actually the opposite of what we've been saying, because that's a car film made this year, am I correct? And car movies aren't dead. We're completely wrong. Car movies are alive and well. All right, do we have any more questions for the panel?
I have one question for you.
Oh, be careful.
It's based on your t-shirt. If Back to the Future is remade today, what car would replace the DeLorean?
Bring it.
You went there.
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. You know what? I mean, it would have to be something that failed. It would have to be something like a Fisker Karma or something. It would have to be something, a car company that didn't work. It would have to be something that just did not work. The trouble is, in the old days, there was only one or two car companies that didn't work. Today, there are a load of them. So it's hard to pick. But I'd probably say a Fisker. A Fisker Karma.
We'll have to Google what that is.
Good question, though. Good question. He'll not die another day, he will. Any other questions? No, we got a question at the back. Oh, he's saying hello.
People saying hello.
Have you ever been at an auction when you've just said hello to somebody and bought yourself a $15 million painting?
He's just bought a car.
Seriously, on the night I picked it up, I've just walked across from there, to here. Now come back here and ask a question. You have to ask a question now.
Hello, how are you doing? Just let the car wait in front, so...
That was the worst question in the history of questions.
Yeah, round of applause in the worst question in the history of time. The worst question ever asked. That man's a hero.
Or something.
In the immortal words of Mad Max Fury Road, witness this man. Thank you very much, Dan. So, we have one more question, I think, from Mansoor up front, our very good friend and an actual amateur racer.
I have a question. Is there like...
Speaker to the mic, please.
Yes. So is there like actors who are real racers, like Paul Newman, for example? Is there like, you want to see more of those people like him? Because he made cars, by the way. Because I think he made the character, the red character, tells exactly what is racing. So we need people like that, actors who knows about racing. Like Paul Newman, for example. He's the best.
Oh, we had an actor like that, didn't we?
Yes, exactly. I mean, the one that came to mind was rest in peace Paul Walker. He was a huge car guy. He was, he loved...
Everybody knows that Paul Walker was a car guy. He wasn't just an actor.
Yeah.
He actually collected hundreds of cars.
Yeah. So, more's the pity as well.
He's also called Paul. I think you have to be called Paul.
Yeah, potentially. So, that's another one I know of. And hopefully, I agree, there need to be more because that passion does come through.
Any other actors?
Well, I know Adrian Brody is a very famous. He loves racing cars. He does all his car stunts himself, and Tom Cruise does all his car stunts himself.
Tom Cruise is big into cars, isn't he, and bikes.
Yeah, he's into bikes. He rides a bike in every movie of his. He does that.
He also runs in every one of his movies.
He's one of the best runners Hollywood has.
He really, not about cars, but I just want to point this out. Watch every Mission Impossible movie, there'll be a shot of Tom Cruise running. In fact,
I have another one, Rowan Atkinson.
Rowan Atkinson.
Big time. He's a car person. He loves his cars. He had, or does he still have, a McLaren F1?
He sold them
after he crashed it.
But he races classic cars.
That's
He's a
right.
regular on the classic car racing.
XJ220 as well, right? Rowan Atkinson also had an XJ220 Jaguar.
So who is Rowan Atkinson? You're all saying his name like everybody knows who Rowan Atkinson is.
Mr. Bean!
Mr. Bean is a car guy. Why isn't he here at the Dubai Motor Show? We should actually invite Rowan Atkinson down. You know, by the way, he's the shyest man in the world. So if you brought him up here, he wouldn't say anything. Despite being Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson actually doesn't like to talk to large crowds, which is why you won't find any interviews or anything. But if he talks about cars, he lights up, like our panel over here. Do you have any more questions before we wrap it up? Any more questions for our great panel about cars and film? We're talking cars and films. We're talking Knight Rider, A-Team van. I really like the A-Team van. There is an A-Team van in Dubai. Did you know that? There used to be an A-Team van here back in the 90s. Who knows where that car is today? Any more questions? Okay, then I'd like to thank our panel, Arafat Ali Counter and Extra Cake. I'd like to thank Shariq, got your name right, and Miguel from Ali Classic Cars. Gentlemen, how can we find you if you want to talk about cars and films? Miguel, how do we find you?
Well, we're a small museum in Alain. We're just across the Wadi roundabout. So if you stop by Alain, feel free to stop by and I'll be there to receive you.
They have a great car collection. They've got some beautiful Land Rovers, they've got Cadillacs, they've got amazing cars in the garden city of Alain. Shariq, how do you find out about Filmphoria?
You can just go to filmphoria.com. You can ask Filmphoria on Facebook, Twitter. Just look for Filmphoria, you'll find us.
Cool. And the cake, how do you find out about the cake?
Well, let me not talk about the cake, but let me talk about Middle East Film and Comic Con. Just search for Middle East Film and Comic Con or www.mefcc.com.
All right. Thank you. Now, a round of applause for our guest.